Hey guys, Miss Sailor here. So we are going to talk about the Monroe administration, 1817 to 1825. Now, near the end of James Madison's presidency, he turns to James Monroe, who is a fellow Virginian, and he wants him to be his successor. So in the election of 1816, Monroe overwhelms his Federalist opponent, Rufus King of New York, by 183 to 34 margin in the Electoral College. Now, the Virginian dynasty of presidents continued because of this. So at the outbreak, if you're interested of things with Monroe, at the outbreak of the Revolutionary War, he had dropped out of college. He was going to the College of William and Mary to join the army. He ends up serving under Washington, who calls him a brave, active, and sensitive army officer. He ends up studying law under Jefferson. He serves as a representative in the Virginia Assembly, as governor, as a U.S. senator, and as a U.S. ambassador to Paris, London, and Madrid. Under President Madison, Monroe had been his Secretary of State and had doubled as his Secretary of War during the War of 1812. So, Monroe was a very, very busy guy, but he was also one of the youngest revolutionaries that there were. Now, despite the Lewis and Clark expedition, the boundaries of the Louisiana Purchase remained contested. Expansionists chose to believe that the purchase included the vast stretches of land that are Spanish Texas. The Spanish government disagrees, however. The first attempt to resolve this issue takes place in February of 1819 with the signing of this Adams-Onus Treaty. Now, this also intended to settle the problem of Florida. See what it is. Spanish Florida had been a difficult situation since even the settlements of the North American colonies, first for England and then for the United States. By 1819, American settlers no longer feared attacks by Spanish troops. Instead, they were dealing with the tribes like the Creek and the Seminole, who are raiding into Georgia and then retreating safely into the Florida wilderness. So, in March of 1818, General Andrew Jackson, frustrated by his inability to punish the Creek and Seminole raiders, pursued them across international border into Spanish Florida. Technically speaking, he does not have Monroe's permission to do this. It is an international incident and technically speaking, a declaration of war because the U.S. Army hasn't invaded a piece of Spain when they invade Spanish Florida. Now, he also captures and executes 2 British citizens that were accused of acting against the United States. They were helping the Creek and Seminoles. Outraged by the U.S. invasion of its territory, the Spanish government demanded that Jackson and his troops withdraw. Now, Secretary of State under James Monroe is John Quincy Adams. He offers instead to purchase Florida from Spain. And Spain, in all honesty, I will get into it a bit in this discussion, they're dealing with a lot right now. Especially in this time, 1818. So really, this is not a bad idea for them to offload Florida because they are dealing with a lot in their New Spain area. So Spain does agree to cede Florida to the United States while setting the boundary between the United States and Mexico at the Sabine River. You should recognize that today it is the most eastern state line of the state of Texas. So in exchange, Adam is giving up the lands west of the Mississippi, that is Texas, and it forgives Spain their $5 million debt to the United States. But they give us Florida. So Unfortunately, the Adams-Onus Treaty upsets a lot of American expansionists. They criticize Adams for not laying the claim to all of Texas while he could, because they believed it was included in the Louisiana Purchase. In the summer of 1819, just a couple months after the signing of this treaty, James Long, who was from Mississippi, becomes a filibuster. A filibuster is a private, unauthorized military adventurer. He leads 300 men on an expedition across the Sabine River to take control of Texas. Long's men are successful in capturing Nacogdoches. They write a Declaration of Independence and set up a Republican government for a short time. Doesn't last very long, of course. They are run out. Long tries to return, and he ends up arrested by Spanish authorities, imprisoned, and killed. But he is one of just a couple or one of many who are trying to do this during this time period. We also have these gentlemen, Moses Austin and Stephen F. Austin. Now, Moses Austin is the father to Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin, he's an American impresario. He's known as the father of Texas and the founder of Texas. He led the second and ultimately successful colonization of the East Texas region by bringing 300 families from the United States to the region in 1825. His father died in 1821. Originally, his father, Moses, is the one who receives the impresario grant from Spain to settle Texas. When he dies in 1821, Stephen Austin he wins recognition of the impresario grant from the newly independent state of Mexico. So Austin begins moving those families in 1825 and settles the region. And he tries to maintain good relations with the Mexican government until, of course, the Declaration of Texas Independence, at which point he sides on the side of these colonists, and later on ends up leading Texas forces. He serves as a commissioner, and he also runs in 1836 in the Texas presidential election, where he loses to Sam Houston, but Houston appointed him as Secretary of State for the new republic, to which Austin held the position until his death in December of 1836. But these gentlemen, especially Stephen F. Austin, are referred to as the father of Texas. Now remember, I said Spain had some other situations going on, and what they had going on is the reason why they were kind of willing to just give up Florida and not deal with that drama, is because they are having Latin American revolutions going off like crazy. What we have is that in 1808, Spain is invaded by French troops. And Napoleon forces the abdication of King Ferdinand in favor of the French emperor's brother, Joseph Bonaparte. So they put a French king on the Spanish throne. And though Spanish officials in Mexico are loath to oppose the new king, Mexicans begin forming secret societies to help both support Ferdinand and also go ahead and advocate for independence from Spain. Now, we have Simon Bolivar. He is a South American soldier who is instrumental in the continent's revolutions against the Spanish Empire. He is in Spain. He immerses himself in the political spheres in Europe. After France invaded Spain, he becomes involved in the resistance movement, and he ends up helping Spanish Americans fight for independence. In 1825, the Republic of Bolivia is created in the honor of him, hailed by many as El Liberador, so the liberator. Now, on the right, you have Father Hidalgo. Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla, he is a Roman Catholic priest and revolutionary leader who is also called the father of Mexican independence. He was very worried about the oppression of his parishioners by Spanish authorities, and it causes him to begin to question Spanish power. So what happens is he becomes involved in these secret societies in Mexico to advocate for independence. Well, they get caught. He's in a group near San Miguel, near Dolores, and the plot is betrayed. So he gets caught, but instead of fleeing, Hidalgo is very proactive. He decides to act instead. So on September 16th, 1810, he rings the church bell in Dolores to call his parishioners of an announcement of revolution against the Spanish. So his speech was not only an encouragement to revolt, but a cry for racial equality and redistribution of land. So it is known as the Cry of Dolores. So he begins this movement for independence that becomes a social and economic war of the masses against the upper class. That is why today, September 16th, is celebrated as Mexico's Independence Day, and this is part of the reason why Spain was very willing by 1819 to just go ahead and secede Florida, because they are already losing control of the different regions of South America and Central America, who were all having revolutions against them. But remember, at this point, it is a French king sitting on the Spanish throne, which definitely makes all the difference. So I will be making a part 2 to continue this lecture of the Monroe presidency.